What you lot saying? It's your boy Jababoy here, and today I am going to be talking about the new F1 2018 season. That's right guys, if you're unfamiliar, the new F1 2018 season is just this week. A lot of media hype, a lot of questions onto what the season's going to deliver, and in the midst of all of this, I'm going to be giving you guys a season preview on who I think is going to be delivering this season, who I don't think is going to be delivering this season, the changes of this season, and much more. But beforehand, I've actually created a little intro. I don't know if you guys know, but I used to be a pro at making intros and stuff like that. I thought, because this is a season preview to the new F1 season, I figured, why not create an intro? Make it kind of professional, I'd say, to be honest. So I hope you guys enjoy, and with that, roll it.
Yo, you might see gun fingers when I come in the place I like. You might see gun fingers when I come in the place I like. Tell them don't go down there, you hit. Tell them don't come round there, you hit.
So kicking things off with the changes that are going to be happening this season, most notably the Halo system, of course. This is a brand new feature that is going to be implemented to the Formula 1 cars of this year, of course. The reasons why was because of objects that flew out of cars or debris or something like that could potentially fly into the helmet and not the driver unconscious, excuse me. So in regards to this, they've made that Halo system to stop all of that coming, you know, onto the driver and all that kind of stuff like that. Most notably towards tragedies such as George Bianchi, Henry Surtees, Felipe Massa. I know he isn't dead, but you know, it was a big thing at the time, you know what I mean? And Billy Monga, of course, Billy Whiz, of course, you know. And there's been a lot of controversy surrounding it ever since it got introduced midway through 2017, of course. There's been a lot of backlash. I would say 80% of the feedback that has been given to the Halo have been really negative, to be honest. But whether we hate it or whether we love it, it's staying no matter what. So we gotta live with it for this year. And honestly, this will be something I'll probably get used to over time, to be honest. I mean, it'll be the same thing as with the V6s, of course. Like, when it started, we all hated it because the noise was so like quiet and all that types of stuff like that. Whereas now we've come like accustomed to it. Like, it's become like our new norm, I'd say, for the Formula 1, of course. And I reckon, honestly, this is going to be the same thing with the Halo. I reckon halfway through the season, I mean, there might be some that might really still verbally hate it, but I reckon like the majority will probably forget about it after the first 10 races, of course. So it's just all a matter of getting used to be honest. In addition to this, they also got rid of the shark fins as well, and also alongside that, the T-wings as well. Well, unfortunately, that's gone. They're gonna now be like sort of sloping downhill, like really sad slopes going down to the rear end of the car, of course. And honestly, it's a bit of a shame, to be honest, because I think the shark fins, like I said, it added to the sort of spectacle of F1. It made the cars look really aggressive. I thought, like, generally, I thought this last year's cars looked the most aggressive I've ever seen from a Formula 1 car. Like, generally speaking, like, for instance, a good example, the Mercedes of last year. Good God almighty, that shark fin along with the winglets around it, oh my God, it was the most prettiest F1 car, the most aggressive looking F1 car I've ever seen in my life. And it's honestly such a shame that F1 is going down that route where they're just going to scrap it all. I know they're trying to, like, you know, the racing a lot better and stuff like that, you know, but still, from a casual's point of view, when you turn on F1, it's supposed to be like in your face, loud, violent, crazy, over the top. Now it's becoming sort of less of that, I'd say, this year, to be honest, which is a shame. I hope they do sort that out maybe for next year or something like that, because I think there are a lot of new fans, especially with the new stuff that Liberty Media have done to F1, which in a sense has brought new fans towards the sport who may not know F1 and be like, what is this F1 like, it's all about, like, and may love it for that year, of course. But now this year, you know, with all the stuff going on and all that stuff, maybe they might turn off or something like that. So you gotta think marketing wise, like, you know, was that a step in the wrong direction, to be honest. But like I said, for the Halo, it's here to stay, so we got to deal with it. And you know what, I'll probably get used to it within the next 4 races or so yeah. And finally, this is probably one of the most controversial stories and one that made the news. I swear to God, when it's on the news, I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, oh my God. And that is that the grid girls that we've come to love, the very, very, you know, historic sort of upbringing of F1, which made it the sexy, glamorous sport that it used to be, has now gone. We are not getting grid girls out of this year. I think this year there are probably going to be some male, like, grid guys, whatever it is. I don't there'll be some male people on, like, doing the grid thing, but most of the time it'll be children doing it. It's this weird thing that I think they're trying to, you know, promote it to be like a family friendly type sport. It really frustrates me a lot because grid girls have been the norm ever since it started. And I know people are going to be like saying to me like, oh, but they're just like sexist models that, you know, promote a certain brand that they're designed or like told to sponsor pretty much, and that women should be like more empowered and like more towards like, I don't know, like Lena Gage would say, to be honest. But at the same time, you can't help but feel that this is the norm. This is what created the sport to what it was today. It's something that promotes it, it's something that makes it the glamorous sport, and to see that taken away is kind of a sad thing, to be honest, you know. And also not only that, seeing it as like as an employment standpoint, some of these girls who perhaps could be like trying to build their way up into motorsport or something like that, or perhaps maybe using this as a career, perhaps, you know, might be going out of jobs, of course. You know, you've got to keep that in mind. I mean, there was a lot of people, for instance, like I think there was one model who posted a video saying that this was her life, like she loved doing what she did, you know, and the fact that this is happening pretty much illustrated that F1 doesn't care about, you know, giving girls, you know, jobs and all that kind of stuff like that within the sport, whether it be sexist or not, of course. So in my honest opinion, I think there's a really, really bad call by Formula One, to be honest, you know, for that to happen, of course. But let me know in the comments what you think about that, you know, because it was a really massive controversial thing that happened in the news, of course. So please comment down below telling me your thoughts. And finally, the season schedule has been slightly changed, to be honest. I mean, we do have that one new circuit, of course, in France, of course. Cannot wait. That is in June, of course, so that'd be pretty darn awesome, to be honest. And in terms of the regulars, we have Azerbaijan, who was in the middle of the year last year, moved from the middle of the season to the start of the season, more specifically in April, of course. Very, very good indeed. Azerbaijan, a really, really awesome circuit. High speed corners, very street, you know, very narrow course. And also last year, the race, oh my God, that was fucking awesome. Loved it. Oh, so that is going to be pretty awesome, seeing it at the start of the year, of course. Oh, also, yeah, taking away the Russia spot, of course, which will be at the end of September, so pretty much where it was when it started, of course. That's the noticeable change, of course. Another change that we knew from last year, of course, is the departure of Malaysia, of course, to give way to France, of course, which is happening this year. And on top of that, sees a returning track in the form of Hockenheim. That's right, the German Grand Prix is back. So happy it's back. I hope it stays, because legit, like, I was so sad when it wasn't on the calendar last year, like in terms of Formula One, to be honest. It has a special place. There's a lot of German fans who are willing to see their German people and their German drivers, of course, in terms of Sebastian Vettel and Nico Hülkenberg, of course. So that's going to be a really good one to see. And finally, Bahrain and China have swapped, so China is now the third round of the championship rather than the second round like it was last year, and Bahrain is the second round in the championship rather than the third round of the championship, which that race will happen in April 7th. So, and then a week later or 2 weeks later, we have the Chinese Grand Prix. So that's the new reshuffling, of course, of that two races, of course. Another thing that F1 has done this year is include new compounds for the new tyres, of course. Those include the Hypersoft, which is pretty much Ultra Soft but times 10, so like Ultra Softs on steroids, pretty much. On the opposite scale, you have the Super Hards. That's kind of the hard tyres on steroids again, so you get the picture. So I'm very intrigued on where they're going to use that for. I mean, definitely use the Hypersoft for tracks like Monaco and Canada, because they're more notorious for using softer compounds around tracks like that, of course. But in terms of the Super Hard, I'm not sure. I would probably most likely suggest they'll do it on tracks that are very hard, you know, in terms of tyre wear, to be honest. I mean, obviously I'll do it for tracks like, say, USA or something like that, or Russia, I'd say, because obviously the tyre wear around those two circuits are not too bad, to be honest. We saw you know, all of the drivers during that race go on a one stop, to be honest. And I think if they went on super hard, it would just be an overkill. It would just be too much of an overkill. There could be potentially one person that could just do 0 stops, which obviously you can't do, but it could be a thing, to be honest. So it's one thing pushing it in terms of tyre life. It's another thing just pushing it way over the edge where drivers can actually, you know, maybe perhaps go the full distance on them. So they've got to be a little bit careful with that stuff like that. But in terms of tracks they could do it on, if I was a betting man, I would say probably China. China is probably one of the tracks that I would say use the super hards on. The tyre wear in China in the past was super bad, especially in 2013. People just fell off the cliff quite a lot. You know, there was a lot of guys who were pitting on the 4th or 5th lap of the race, of course, you know, even completing 2 laps on qualifying, of course. So you've got to factor in that, of course. I mean, and in terms of the other tracks have been okay, to be honest. I mean, in terms of the tyre compounds that we had last year, all of them managed to do whole season with no problems. I mean, we had the right tyre compound for each specific circuit in the right place, pretty much. I mean, we had mediums and the hards on tracks like China and Spa, and then you had mediums and soft for like tracks like Spain and tracks like, I'd say, Malaysia, of course. So really, I think a super hard is kind of like overkill, to be honest. I love that they're doing the hypersoft because I think it would add more to the racing, to be honest. But really, super hard, it's just going to be too overkill. It'll be too overkill in terms of the tyre wear and then going a distance, of course. So that's the general changes in the Formula 1 season, of course. But with that being said, let's move on to the teams, more specifically towards testing and how they fared in testing, of course. And talking of testing, in which there were some really funny moments. Indeed, one of them was one of the days it was snowing, and actually here in the UK it was snowing on a couple of these days, of course. It actually transferred to the Spain circuit, the Catalonia circuit. It was quite funny. It's the first time I think probably in a while we've ever seen snow in F1, which was quite amusing, to be honest. Obviously not good for the teams and the drivers, of course. It's time to get their, you know, used to the car and, you know, used to the track and sort of used to the new stuff available to them. But in general, as from a fan's point of view, I thought it was really hilarious, to be honest. You know, a lot of people on Twitter making funny memes and all that about it. So yeah, it was quite funny indeed. As a whole, testing was absolutely normal. So pretty much dry conditions throughout the most part, of course. I mean, there were a couple of down parts, and that was that snow part, of course. But most of the time, it was very, very dry, and a lot of people did get a lot of really serious mileage under their belts, which was really nice. And now, as we head to the season, of course, I'm hoping, my predictions for the season is that I'm hoping this season actually delivers, and actually is a lot better than last year. Last year, no, don't get me wrong, last year was really, really good. But this year, hopefully, fingers crossed to Ferrari, they don't muck this up. And potentially that big battle for 5th place, of course, in the constructors. I reckon we're going to be in for a treat. This is probably going to be a really, really spectacular season. Yes, people are going to get annoyed and pissed off because of 1, the grid girls, 2, the halos, and 3, fins, the shark fins and all that. I mean, that might piss off a couple of people, of course. If we aside from all of that, I generally think this year's going to be good. I generally think, from a standpoint, as long as there's no I mean, obviously we're going to get some controversy here and there. I mean, it wouldn't be Formula 1 without controversy, of course. I mean, it's built upon it anyways. I guess if we have less of that and more racing, I think this season's actually going to turn out to be good. But generally, as for myself, I'm generally looking forward to it. I'm generally going to be looking out for a lot of like teams who are particularly expecting to be really good. A lot of drivers as well, and Charles Leclerc, of course. And hopefully this season delivers to be another classic year, of course. And we'll start off with, of course, Mercedes, of course, the world champions from last year. So Mercedes had a really, really good testing, of course, completing over 1,000 laps, which is the most that any team in Formula 1 has during that testing, of course, which is really, really good for them. In terms of lap times, they weren't really there, I'd say, to be honest, but more they were just focusing on the race pace, to be honest, because if you remember last year, Mercedes really struggled in dirty air. Ferrari would sometimes have them on the ropes sometimes, you know, particularly in tracks like Hungary and perhaps Spain, of course, as well too. So there were times where Mercedes did lack a little bit in race trim. So I love the fact that Mercedes have worked upon their weaknesses, to be honest, you know, because they know they're going to be making the most laps. They know they're going to be the fastest either way. So why not focus on the weaknesses? That's pretty awesome to see. Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas say they love the car. The car is less of a diva than it was last year. So that is pretty good to see. In terms of where they're going to be, I reckon it will be the same old as last year. Mercedes will just run away with it. I think Mercedes will be a lot more stronger than they were last year. Last year, they got lucky because I think Ferrari on a couple of occasions did look like they had Mercedes on the ropes. But you can't deny how good that Mercedes car was last year. And the fact that Lewis and Valtteri said the car was really good could suggest big things for Mercedes this year. Ferrari had a really similar testing towards Mercedes, to be honest. It was really positive. They got a lot of laps done. And generally speaking, the car looked really good. I'm not going to lie. Like, it handled really well, to be honest. And in terms of the amount of laps they did, they were only second to Mercedes. And they were only 100 off. And, get this, they were the fastest car during those 8 days of testing, setting a blistering lap time of 1 minute 17.7 on day 3, day 4, I'm not sure, but yeah, day 3, day 4, something like that. Set by Sebastian Vettel, of course, on the Hypersoft. Yeah, you got to mention Hypersoft. So wow, immediately the Hypersoft's doing what it said it was going to do. You know, be a lot more quicker than the Ultrasofts, of course. So that's pretty awesome indeed. And generally, yeah, Ferrari didn't have a lot of problems. I mean, they did have that little burning problem that they had probably like day 6, day 7 of the test. But most of the time, Ferrari really were just good. They were generally good. They got a lot of mileage in there. They didn't have a lot of breakdowns, which was very, very good to hear. You know, from what the drivers have been saying, the car, you know, a lot better than it was last year. So in theory, I think Ferrari are probably going to be punching above their weight and hopefully probably keeping Mercedes honest, or even giving Mercedes a really hard time like they did last year, or even better, actually probably beating them and giving Sebastian an actual proper title shot, of course. Because you may remember, Ferrari had a really good season. They looked like the team to beat. They looked really good. They looked like a team that could actually fucking destroy Mercedes. Like, they look really good. And then from Singapore onwards, it's just been constant Ferrari teething problems. Like the old school Ferrari teething problems that we had back in 2016, back in 2015, 2014. It's been a Ferrari recurring thing. Ferrari, they had a really good car throughout the last couple of years, but they blown it away because of bad fucking luck. Bad strategy, reliability, all sorts of stuff, even the drivers as well. Things like that that make me so frustrated towards Ferrari, because Ferrari, I know deep down they can do it. I know deep down every year, like 2015, 2016, 2017, even 2014, for God's sake, they had a really good car underneath them. What do? They go ruin it with reliability problems. They go ruin it with driver strategy problems. You know, it's constant this and that, and it's like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, because last year Ferrari were really coming into it, and I genuinely thought, this could be it. This could be it. Ferrari could actually generally win the championship this year. And then they go throw it away just like that. It's just unbelievable. So I'm praying this year that there are none of this time around, and they actually do get their head together and actually do create a fight to Mercedes, because I generally want to see that. Like last year, that was the big talking point. Sebastian Vettel versus Lewis Hamilton. I want to see this time around Sebastian Vettel mark a huge, real threat towards Lewis Hamilton's championship. Not something where he goes for it for 13 rounds and then goes fucks it up afterwards. I want to see something in the days of Hunt and Lauda, Prost and Senna, Hill and Schumacher. I mean, those types of eras that excited, that got me to why I'm loving F1 right now, pretty much. Said Ferrari, you know, they look good, but they got a big mountain to climb. That's what I'm gonna say. Red Bull. Now, Red Bull had sort of a mix, I'd say, to be honest. I mean, they were kind of quick to begin with. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo setting the fastest lap in day 1 of testing, of course. But then afterwards, they had a bit of troubles, of course. I mean, they had that spin, of course. They had a few drive shaft problems here and there. Just generally, like, most of the time towards that power unit they got. I know they say tagged Aston Martin, Hugh, or whatever the fuck they call it, but to us, it's Renault. And I think Red Bull, they tried doing it in 2015, you know, and I know they got like a deal, whatever it is, but I think honestly, if they're going to be competitive, because I know they got a competitive car underneath them, they got the best chassis in the whole field, of course. But from a real serious championship point, if they want to make their way up to the top, they may have to consider finding new engine suppliers or something like that, because maybe that could be the key to getting them another world championship or constructors championship. You never know. But for now, they look really quick. And in terms of the season, my predictions, I reckon they're probably going to be the same as they were last year. I think they were there or thereabouts, to be honest. I mean, they weren't like in a serious championship contention, to be honest. And then we're bagging up a couple of wins. I mean, we had Daniel Ricciardo in Baku, that stunning race, of course, that he did, of course. And we have Max's incredible win in both Malaysia and Mexico, of course. Very aggressive from Max at the start of the race, of course, in Mexico particularly. Very, very driven, very, you know, determined wins, of course, from Max. So I feel this year's going to be more of a evolution rather than a revolution for Red Bull, to be honest, because, like I said, they don't have the power unit to match Ferrari and Mercedes, of course. I'm going to say they can get a little bit more wins than they did last year, to be honest. I mean, they'll still have the same amount of podiums that they did last year, but I think in terms of wins, hopefully they'll have a lot more than they did last year, of course. Now moving on into Force India. Now Force India had a pretty good testing, to be honest. They completed a lot of laps, specifically 711 of course, which is pretty good, to be honest. I mean, I know Mercedes did 1,000, but still, you know, overall 8 days, that's not too bad actually, to be honest. And despite them not being, you know, quick in testing, I'd say, to be honest, they were more focusing on their race pace. So the same as Mercedes were, to be honest, which is very, very good, to be honest. I mean, when you have a good car, you know, that was very, very good last year, to be honest, you pretty much will be focusing not only on pace as well, but more towards the race, you know, the reliability, I'd say, to be honest. And honestly, in terms of predictions for them, I think it's going to be more the same for Force India. I mean, I know they had that big, you know, kerfuffle with Perez and Ocon, to be honest, but if they can now sort that out and actually, you know, focus on their raw pace and whatever, and less on crashing into each other and all that, I reckon they could be staring in a couple of podiums, to be honest. I mean, maybe something what we had in 2016 with Force India, because you may remember they scored 2 podiums, I think it was 2 or 3, I'm not sure, but 2 or 3 for Force India in 2016. So I reckon Force India might score a few podiums this year, to be honest. And if Red Bull have problems, which God forbid, oh my god, if they have loads of problems, oh lord, if they have more problems than they did last year, God help me with that. They could legit actually challenge Red Bull and maybe even place higher than them in the championship, which would be huge for the team. I mean, you're talking 3rd place in the championship. That would be huge for them. More money, more resources, more speed out of the car, which would be huge. I mean, I would love to see a young up-and-coming team like Force India, who have been in the business for 10 years, get rewarded with a fantastic 3rd place, which would really help them in the constructors. Now on to Renault. Now Renault had a pretty sort of up and down-ish sort of testing, to be honest. They were right up there in terms of the top in terms of lap times, which was really good for them indeed. And they completed quite a lot of laps actually. I think it was around the same as Force India actually, so that's very good indeed as well. But it hasn't been as smooth as we've seen from the lap times and from the number of laps that they've done, of course. I mean, over the course of testing, they've had certain problems, sniggering problems that have kind of faltered them from going a little bit longer, to be honest. Some being reliability, some being driver error, of course, but it's just stuff like that that's just really faltered them from doing more and, you know, maybe learning a bit more, I'd say, to be honest. But generally, for the most part, the testing's been really good for them. They've completed a lot of laps, which is very, very good. I would say in terms of predictions, they're probably going to be punching close to Force India. I think they'll definitely be well ahead of the Toro Rosso, Haas, Williams battle, of course, and perhaps could challenge for that coveted 4th place spot of Force India, of course. Having suffered all of those problems that they suffered during the Lotus Renault days would be huge for them, really, really huge, and would really, really help them in terms of maybe progressing towards the front, of course, which is their probably main goal, to be honest, getting them back to how it was back in the mid-noughties where Fernando was dominating in the Renault, of course. So overall, not too bad from Renault, of course. Now next up for Toro Rosso and Toro Rosso. Oh my god, what a test! Oh, I did not expect this to happen. So basically, if you did not know, Toro Rosso racked up the new Honda engine, of course. Yep, they signed with Honda last year after McLaren departed with Honda, and Honda were like, oh, I don't want to be left out in F1 and type thing. So Toro Rosso was like, fuck it, you can be in the engine, whatever. So basically, I thought Toro Rosso were going to be the new McLaren. They were just going to break down everywhere and it was going to be a shit show for them. Basically, Toro Rosso goes out and gives McLaren a whip of their century. I'm talking, they did serious mileage, and not only that, they were really quick. They were up there with the likes of Force India, Renault, and also McLaren too as well. So they were really, really quick, and I genuinely think, fingers crossed, that continues for them during the season, of course. And in terms of where they're going to finish. As long as, like I said, as long as they don't have a lot of reliability problems, of course, during the season, I reckon they could be up there. That 6th place battle between Haas, Williams. Yeah, there is going to be that big fight for P5, of course, and I think Toro Rosso will definitely be amongst it as well. And of course, with their new driver lineup as well, they do have Brendan Hartley and Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly, this will be a very good year for him. It'll be a proving year for him, and it'll be very interesting to see how this youngster will do behind the wheel, of course. Got a lot to prove, of course. You know, the young rising prospect, the next sort of Max Verstappen, I suppose. So a lot on his plate. And as for Brendan, I know he has that resume of winning Le Mans 24 hours, of course. But at the same time, this is going to be a proving year for him to see how he'll perform in a full season, a full all-out season of Formula 1, of course. See how he copes with the pressure that gets involved in. Now, I know he dealt with the pressure very, very well last year, same with Pierre as well, but for both of those drivers in particular, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they'll fare this year and how it compares to what we saw from the likes of Sainz and Kvyat, I'd say, and whether they're going to be tipped for possibly a seat at Red Bull, perhaps. Like I said, up there in the top 5, perhaps. That will be their target, I'd say, to be honest. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, McLaren inheriting Toro Rosso's Renault engine into their car now. And so far, so good. I mean, they did have a couple of troubles. For instance, their exhaust issue, I guess it was, for Dan Dawn, A4, something like that. And then for Alonso, he had a gearbox issue, which they had to repair during the morning, of course, of test. But overall, for McLaren, they've had a pretty decent test, you know, much better than they did last year, to be honest. They racked up some serious miles, which was really good. They were there or thereabouts in terms of lap times. And in terms of the drivers, they were more relaxed than they were last year. Last year, both Alonso and Van Dorn were really, really stressed and pressured and really sort of in a frustrating state, and especially for the whole McLaren boys. They were very, very frustrated, really struggling with mechanical issues, you know, trying to figure out a way of how to get this McLaren car sorted for the season, and it just progressed the season and it just got worse and worse and worse. But in contrast, this season's been a lot more positive for them, and I hope it does translate towards this season where they actually do start getting some serious points. I mean, I know Van Dorn got some serious points in the latter stages of this year, but in particular for Alonso, if he's going to stay in F1, he needs to know that he has a car within him and he has the reliability within him to get those performances, to get the points that Stoffel has been getting. And I generally think if McLaren don't give Alonso a car that is willing to get him serious performances, then I think he will step away this year, to be honest, or even perhaps step away from Formula 1 entirely. You know, it will be a huge loss if it happens, to be honest. But not only that, this will be huge for McLaren because they'll lose a lot of like serious investment and a lot of sponsorship as well that comes with it, you know, that they could use, particularly, you know, especially as they don't have a title sponsor, which they're so chasing, to be honest, at the moment. So they really need to start getting their heads down if they want to get title sponsors, more sponsors, Endeavour, you know, more to become where it was back in 2012 when it was a really outstanding car on that year, of course. So this is really a make or break year for McLaren, of course. They need to perform this year, otherwise they are screwed. And in terms of predictions, I think honestly for McLaren, if all goes well, and fingers crossed it all goes well, I think McLaren could be up there in that fight for 5th place, of course, in the constructors, because that does look a really good fight between Renault, Haas, Toro Rosso and even Sauber as well. But like I said, fingers crossed. We've got to hope and pray that Renault unit is good for this year. Now swiftly moving on into Haas. Now Haas had a really good test, to be honest. They racked up a lot of laps. Both Roman and Kevin really liked the car. They both gained a lot of really good mileage together, like I said. And word is, Haas even said that they are considered to be dark horses for the potential perhaps 4th or 5th place in the constructors, of course. And that is huge. And as we saw from the lap time, they're not wrong. They actually could generally be a dark horse. They could actually challenge Force India for all we know, to be honest. Because if you look at the overall lap times, Grosjean, who was on the Super Softs, was only 1.1 off the fastest lap set by Sebastian Vettel on Hypersoft tyres. Now, if you were to take away all the Delta, stuff like that, they are probably about 5 to 6 tenths overall off the overall actual pace. If they ran Hypersoft, they probably would have been 5-6 tenths off the pace. If that is true going into this year, oh my god, they are actually looking to be serious dark horses. Not only for 5th, for 4th. That would be huge. I mean, it would create more resources, which could help further, like I said, with other teams, improve the car, make the car faster, of course, you know, perhaps gain more sponsors. I mean, you're talking some serious potential here for for Haas, to be honest. I mean, I hope this all works out because I like Haas. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Haas are one of my like favourite teams, to be honest. They're really, really cool. I like the team, strong heart, and they want to prove themselves as one of the best teams out there. And with that, are determined to get to the front via patience, will, determination, and just self-will, pretty much. And I'm definitely going to be watching, looking out for them during the season, 100%. The fact that they made that statement and looking at the data, of course, that is going to be something I'm going to be heavily looking upon. Now, moving on to Williams. Now, Williams, they didn't have really a good day, to be honest. Their car really suffering a lot in balance, to be honest. They went off a couple of times off the track. The car, you know, becoming, you know, a bit of a handful to drive, to be honest. And generally, during the test, they racked up kind of the least amount, I would say, to be honest, bar sort of Sauber, I'd say, to be honest. Which is a real shame to be honest, because if you look at the past, 2014, 2015, Williams were in flying form. Like, they were up there battling against Ferraris and perhaps maybe for Mercedes, of course. So it is a bit sad to see Williams sort of drop, you know, down and down and down. Time has gone on, to be honest. But in saying that, they do have a new driver in the form of Sergei Sorokin, the driver who replacing Lipe Massa from his retirement last year. You may remember that, of course. So that's going to be very interesting, of course. Sergei didn't race a lot last year, to be honest, so it's going to be very interesting to see how he copes, you know, with the inexperience, you know, of course. Because most drivers who get into F1 beforehand, the following year before, they usually do like a season or whatever of racing, to be honest, before they get into Formula 1 or stuff like that. For instance, Pierre Gasly, he before he got into the Toro Rosso season, before he's elevated to Toro Rosso, he did a whole year of that Super Formula, whatever that was, in Japan, wherever it was. So he did all that and then got the drive in Toro Rosso and performed like magic there. So I hope I get proven wrong for that, and I hope Sergei proves me wrong and actually performs well, you know, because the kid's got talent. I'm not gonna lie, I've seen him a couple of times, you know, I've seen him here and there, you know, he's been done a couple of practice sessions. He's performed well, he's performed there or thereabouts. So it's going to be interesting to see how he copes with the added pressure of being in a really, really high level team like Williams and having to contest against someone as good as Lance Stroll, of course. And talk about Kubica as well. I mean, Kubica, oh man, what a recovery he's had. I mean, 2011 when he had that massive rally accident, I genuinely thought that was it for him. I genuinely thought that's it. He's probably going to do a couple of, you know, races here and there, single seaters, that kind of stuff like that, maybe a Le Mans perhaps. But no, he was so determined that he did a lot of work, he got back on his feet and he got that, you know, big test in for Renault, of course. And now that he's a development driver, in like 6 months of his first test in like, what, 7 years, that is impressive. So hats off to Kubica. I had to put it out there, so yeah, hats off to him. But going back to Williams, I think they're generally going to be sort of in the backfield of the top 5 battle, I'd say, to be honest. Maybe like, say, 8th or 9th, to be honest. Maybe right with Sauber, to be honest, because the car is not there, I'd say, to be honest. It doesn't have the balance I would say maybe perhaps the Renault or even the Force India has. So they've really got a lot of work to do if they want to catch up, of course, and, you know, maybe challenge that top 5, of course. And finally, Sauber. And Sauber had a pretty torrid winter test. I mean, talk about underperforming, but Sauber, really? I know they're expected to be the new Manners of Formula 1, pretty much. But I didn't really think they were going to take it that far. Like, particularly with Charles Leclerc. Charles, the Formula 2 champion, of course, moving up into F1 with Alfa Romeo Sauber, of course. By the way, yep, I forgot to mention Alfa Romeo have taken from Sauber. But they haven't. It's sort of like a joint venture, so it's like same thing as sort of Aston Martin with Red Bull Racing, of course. So yeah, that has happened, and as a result they've recruited, of course, prospect, you would say, in Charles Leclerc, of course. Oh my god, this kid is awesome. Like, this kid, I honestly think this kid has got a bright future in F1. He is chipped to be the next sort of Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Raikkonen, or Ayrton Senna, or Lewis Hamilton, sort of the best of the best, pretty much. And from what he's shown in Formula 2, from what I've known, he's shown that he can deliver, and he can be a real dark horse for some good points here and there. So keep an eye out for Charles Leclerc, of course. Also interesting, they recruited Ericsson over Verline, which was a bit surprising to me. I know Ferrari, Mercedes, that kind of stuff like that, but still, like, really? Bruline had so much potential going for him. He was chipped to be the next big prospect, you know what I mean? He was probably going to be the next sort of Lewis Hamilton or next Nico Rosberg of the sport. You know, he had a lot of bright things going for him. Now that he's been pushed out of Formula 1 pretty much, it's going to be difficult to see him get another drive for a different team pretty much. And that's a real shame, to be honest. I mean, it just sickens me. It just saddens me so much for guys like that who have a lot of talent, who have what it takes, and just get pushed out into the side. Like, what are they supposed to do? So yeah, it is what it is. Hopefully Verline can possibly go back to DTM, or maybe get a reserve driver, one of the teams, whatever, or maybe even perhaps, you know, go to IndyCar, because I know IndyCar are doing well. But yeah, he could possibly go to IndyCar as well, maybe do like a little part-time job there, which would be really, really good for him, of course. But yeah, just overall sucks, to be honest. I guess that's how Formula 1 is, to be honest. I mean, you know, there's 20 drivers out there, 20 of the best drivers in the world, and only 20 can make it, and there are going to be some happy faces that don't make it, of course. So it is what it is. But anyways, back to Sauber, and Sauber had a pretty torrid testing, to be honest. I mean, they did get some serious mileage, yes, that's true, but for the most of the time they just kept spinning around. They kept having so many problems, you know, exhaust, gearbox problems, those cuts of stuff like that, so reliability problems. That's has faulted their running, of course, which is such a shame, because some potential out there with that Sauber. The fact that they're not getting the potential mileage that they should be getting is a bit of a shame, and more of a shame towards, you know, the drivers in it, in terms of Ericsson and Leclerc. Like I said, both prospects, you know, want to have a car that's good enough to be competitive, of course. Let's hope it is, so that they can perform, like I said. But I think from a realistic standpoint, I think they're just going to be the back of the pack. I think they're going to be the next Manners, of course, because the pace that they performed, it's just not up to where the others are, to be honest. They're chipping for the back of the pack for sure, 100%. But hopefully, fingers crossed, they can be somewhat competitive during the season, of course. And with that, bring on the season, of course. And that's a good way to segue to end the video, of course. If you did enjoy this video today, be sure to hit the like button down below. It means a lot. Also, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button with the notification so you don't miss out when my next video comes out, because if you're not in the loop, you're not in the loop. Simple. And finally, comment below, particularly on the predictions, your predictions on how this season's gonna go, what are your thoughts on certain topics that I talked about today, and generally just other stuff. Just comment down below. Anyways, it's your boy, take it easy, I'm out. Peace.